So welcome everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you at our this year first keynote lecture by Professor Fitzenberger. But before I give him floor, I like to introduce our institution and our collaborating institution, the German Embassy. So, at this moment, you are on the top floor of CERGE-EI, which is a joint workplace of CERGE, which is part of Charles University, and of the EI, which is Economic Institute, newly Ekonomický ústav Akademie věd. And IDEA, which is the key organizer of this event, is virtual entity within CERGE-EI, in fact, academic think tank, while CERGE-EI is focused primarily on top-notch, excellent basic research. IDEA, the think tank, is focused on very actual policy issues in the Czech Republic and in the EU. So, therefore, the lecture today will not be similar to the one given yesterday, which was purely academic. Today's lecture is focusing very closely on policies. And now I would like to give floor to our to representative of our collaborating institution, the German Embassy, Dr. Martin Schmidt, who is head of the Economic Climate and Science section at the German Embassy in Prague. So please.
Honorable Member of Parliament, dear Professor Münich, Professor Fitzenberger, ladies and gentlemen. Quite a while ago already I have read Stefan Zweig, Die Welt von gestern, The World of Yesterday, and I still remember a passage that lists old certainties, like the emperor was for decades Franz Josef. You paid an amount of X guilders to the pension fund, and then you would receive the amount of Y after retiring. You would work for 50 years for the same company. And then Stefan Zweig describes in his book how this old world, this world of yesterday, came apart. I was remembering that when today I reread my notes of my opening remarks, and I thought, well, an opening remark on today's labor market now needs some change management. And so, for example, I wanted or was about to speak about US tariffs as the most disruptive challenge to today's labor markets, but I think they are no longer number one on the priority list of what our economies, the German and the Czech economy, have to face. So I thought, well, let's better have a look at what are the certainties. And so I thought a safe bet would be that change is a certainty also in today's labor markets. Let me just mention the buzzwords: demographic shift, technical development like artificial intelligence, automatization, energy prices. These are transforming, if not disruptive, factors. So resilience and adaptability are now more important than ever. Lifelong learning, gaining practical experience, and taking on responsibility early in one's career are key to navigating these changes successfully. Another certainty is that you thank your co-host for the event. So my thanks go to our co-host, the CERGE-EI idea. My sincere thoughts go to Professor Münich, who took up the idea when we met a couple of months ago here, and now we're here at a joint event. It's my pleasure to welcome experts from the Czech Republic and from Germany to discuss a topic that affects us all. I see young students here, and so you're probably the most affected by what we're going to discuss today, the future of the labor markets, both in Czech Republic and in Germany. Another certainty, in my view, is that you get stronger when you exchange knowledge, share best practices, and explore ideas together. And that's why I take so much pleasure in welcoming also Professor Fitzenberger, today's speaker here. And let me briefly introduce him. You have been since September 2019 director of the Institute für Arbeitsmarkt und Berufsforschung. That's the research institute of the Federal Agency of Labor or Employment. You see there an even better translation than I can offer. Since October 2020, you have held the position of Professor of Quantitative Labor Economics at the Friedrich Alexander University in Erlangen-Nuremberg. You are a research fellow at the Institute for the Future of Work in Bonn, at CES-IFO in Munich, and at the Research Center for Education and the Labor Market in Maastricht, as well as an international research affiliate at the Institute for Fiscal Studies in London. Your main research areas include income and wage inequality, employment trends, evaluation of labor market and education policy measures, school to work transitions, employment of mothers, trade unions, as well as evaluation of methods and quantile regression techniques. I wonder perhaps it would have been more practical to mention what you're not covering. So I'm sure you will not talk to us about the world of yesterday, but we hope to get some insight from you in today's or even tomorrow's world. And with that, I close my introduction and hand over the floor to Professor Münich again.
So a few more words. We decided to share the welcome of Professor Fitzenberger here. For those who are pure researchers here, I will mention three most cited papers of Professor Fitzenberger, because I have looked at the Web of Science immediately, of course, which will introduce him also as a researcher by the topic. So the most cited is a paper from 2014, From Sick Man of Europe to European Superstar, Germany's Resurgent Economy, in Journal of Economic Perspectives. Another one in labor economics in the US, the older and more famous one, Rising Wage Inequality, the Decline of Collective Bargaining and the Gender Wage Gap. And the third one, the effectiveness of public sponsored training, revisited and so on, in the Journal of Labor Economics, the European journal, younger and also well known, but not as much as the US one. So this was my few cents for introduction, and I will add the importance of the Institute, EIB, in Nuremberg, which is quite close to Czech Republic, the importance, the example of good practice, something we should be aiming to, both in the way how it operates, what is it doing in terms of research, support of evidence-based policies, in the provision of collection and especially provision and access to data for research and policy analysis. And Anku, I see many people from ministries who are involved in analytical work, so some of you know well what IIB represents. So this was for introduction. The lecture itself will last for about 15 minutes, it depends how it will go, followed by my short reflection of the most important, in my view, Czech realities, which we can compare to the Germany. Now it's time to give floor to Professor Fitzenberger.
Dear Mr. Schmidt, dear Daniel Münich, dear members of parliament, dear colleagues, I already had the honor to speak yesterday here, give a research paper, and today it's a policy talk. In fact, Daniel ordered what I should say. No, he suggested to talk about labor market trends in Germany, which are of course super important for all its neighboring countries. We are very integrated in Europe, in the European Union, so what happens in one country affects the economy, the labor market in other countries as well. We focus on evidence-based policy. What is IAB doing? The Institute for Employment Research, which on the one hand is a government institute. It's part of the Federal Employment Agency, and partly it does research for the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. And it will have its 60th birthday last year. It was built, not last year, next year, in 27. It was built in the 1960s on the idea that there should be more evidence, there should be more scientific basis for policy advice, when in the 1960s in the former West Germany there was concern that education and vocational advice, career guidance for young people should have a sound academic basis. That was the starting point of IAB. As of today, we do fundamental research. We do reasonably well in publishing papers in top journals in the fields of sociology and economics. I'm personally an economist. We do policy advice. This morning at 8 o'clock, I had to get up and discuss with the heads and the press team of the Federal Employment Agency today's presentation of the unemployment rate. Every month in Nuremberg, the Federal Employment Agency presents the unemployment figures. There was not much to discuss. As Mr. Schmidt mentioned, tariffs were yesterday. Today it's the Iran war, and but we don't see it in the labor market yet, which doesn't mean anything because it's still too early to see that. In the labor market is stagnating. It's not going up. I mean, it's not improving, but it's also not worsening. What is worsening is the apprenticeship market, and that's the last thing I will talk about today. The German apprenticeship, the vocational education and training system in Germany. And the third basis, the third pillar of IAB, so research, policy advice, is data. On the one hand, IAB collects a lot of survey data. We run, for instance, the longest running establishment survey, firm level survey in the world, and arguably maybe the best one. I don't know. We talked at lunch about firm level data being so important for our understanding of the labor market. We run other surveys, an enormous number of surveys. Now we engage more and more also into online surveys and combine those data, those survey data, with administrative data. Within the realm of the activities of the federal employment agencies, we are actually allowed to merge data, but never across the boundaries. There is an initiative in Germany right now of the current government to implement a new research data law which would broaden the access and the possibility to merge data. At this point, we are limited to the realm of the Federal Employment Agency, which for instance means, which may sound ironic, for instance to Stepan, we are not able to merge our data to the structure of earnings survey in Germany, which is under the realm of the Interior Ministry and not the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. These are sometimes historical institutional coincidences which may some things happen and which make some things happen and other things not happen, and hopefully the current government will change that and broaden the scope of empirical research and also then evidence-based policy advice. So I already mentioned, I shouldn't say too much about IAB. We do policy advice, we do academically independent research. The scientific independence of IAB is super important. We have an independent scientific council. The department heads, the heads of IAB, are appointed through an academic recruitment process. Universities are involved. We compile and provide a lot of data also to the research community, but also to other institutes who do policy consulting. We are part, and we are very happy to be part of the European Network of Labor Market Research Institutes, ELMI, and CERGE-EI is part of the founding members of ELMI. So, and this is a group of institutes which are strong research institutes and very much involved in policy advice. This combination is what distinguishes our network. We are not quite there to have a member in each and every member state of the European Union, but that's sort of the penultimate goal. If we ever get there, also to be sort of, in speaking terms, being a partner of maybe the public employment services, the Union of Public Employment Services all over Europe, and also DG Employment in Brussels, for instance. Most recently, we admitted IRVAP and the Institute for Advanced, IRVAP in Trento in Italy, and the Institute for Advanced Studies in Vienna. So what will I do today? I'll give you an overview, a very eclectic overview of Germany's labor markets or its current labor market problems. I will look a bit deeper into the medium-term outlook, the next 15 years until 2040 with the IAB projections. It's already outdated, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt. I will still talk about tariffs, and we have not much to say about the war yet, and about AI. So these are the topics you mentioned as well. I will give you a specific example how we do evidence-based policy advised, which highlights data collection efforts to undertake sound evaluation of a certain policy, and then also to do research to make credible evidence-based policy advice. And last, I will talk about the crisis, basically, of the German VET market with regard to school-to-work transitions. So let's dig into what we do. As a good economics research institute, you should have an indicator of the state of affairs. Our state of affairs, our affairs are in the labor market. So we have a labor market indicator, a labor market barometer. And this is it on the left. This is Germany from 2016 to early 2026. The blue line is the labor market indicator on average. It combines the dimension employment and unemployment. The solid line in the middle, the straight line in the horizontal line in the middle is at 100. When the lines are above 100, things are improving. When they're below 100, things are deteriorating. In economically normal times, in the good 2010s, employment was rising very much and unemployment was falling, but the unemployment indicator was much below the employment indicator, which is sort of like a textbook notion of how labor markets work. All that was disrupted with COVID. It went back to normal in 2022, employment rising, unemployment not falling yet, but then almost starting to fall, and then the next crisis came, the Russian war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, and so on. And so unemployment has never recovered, has never gone back to the 2019 level. We are now almost 1 million higher than we were in 2019 at unemployment. And employment now, the green line, has converged to 100 as well, to being neutral. Employment is not growing anymore. The economy has been in a recession basically since 3 years. And sort of Germany, the demographic change has hit Germany. The labor force is not growing anymore, so employment has also probably reached its peak. Well, a few years ago, we have also started to collect similar data. This is survey evidence from the employment offices of the Federal Employment Agency. About 150 heads of employment offices are asked about how is employment, how is unemployment going to develop in the next 3 months. This is also being done in a large number of European countries through the public employment services of those countries. And the situation is quite parallel to the German situation. Germany also carries a high weight, of course, in the European labor market barometer. So basically, also in Europe, the situation is overall, the barometer is close to 100. Unemployment is increasing. Expected to increase. Employment has stopped to fall most recently. Has stopped to increase most recently. Where do we stand with employment? The blue line shows you dependent employment in Germany. It has been increasing tremendously in an unexpected way. If we talk about where we were 15 years ago, where already demographic change was predicted, but it was not anticipated that we would see such a huge inflow in migrants, that we would see such a huge increase in the employment rate of women, and we would see such a huge increase in the employment rate of older workers, 55 plus. We have moved in all three dimensions in a way that employment has increased a lot. But that seems to now reach its limits. It's basically stagnating. And the green line is then the actual number of hours worked, total hours. Total hours have increased less than the total number of employees, which also reflects the huge share of part-time employment in Germany. As I understand, we talked about that at lunch yesterday, but the part-time share in the Czech Republic is much lower. You can see this as the glass being half empty, like our chancellor does, who is complaining about Germans not working enough. But you also can see that as a half full glass, because more people than ever are working, and if they did not, the part-time employees were to disappear, then employment and total hours would be much lower. Probably the truth is in between, in particular in light of the fact that in a few years we will lose a lot of employees, and to sustain economic activity, probably we need reforms which also induce people to work more hours and not just increase the number of people working. This shows the big challenge, demographic effect. Every year Germany is losing more than 400, almost 500,000 people more than due to retirement than those entering the labor market. That's the net number, 470,000. We expect this year that 470,000 people more retire than enter the labor market. Over the last 5-10 years, this number has been almost the same. We are losing more than 400,000 every year. But this was compensated by higher labor force participation, especially among elderly workers and among women. And this was compensated by migration. So the net effect was, until last year, still positive, but now it has turned negative. It will turn negative this year. Also, the number of jobs posted, the job openings, has been falling since 2022. And this is in the EU, in Europe in total, where Germany is a major part of course. So this is very similar to the business cycle in Germany. Despite the rise of unemployment, the falling number of job openings, we in fact are in this, what the German debate calls labor market paradox. At the same time, firms find it hard to fill positions, especially positions for skilled workers, so people with a vocational training degree or a university degree. In 2025, so in the third year of the recession, 36% of positions could not be filled, according to IAB firm level evidence, 36%. 55% of positions posted by small firms, 1 to 9 employees, could not be filled. 53% of positions in agriculture, forestry, or construction could not be filled. So we have this paradox of skill shortages, not being able to fill positions, and rising unemployment at the same time, which characterizes the current situation. Where do we go? The megatrends are the same as in all countries. Demography seems to be even stronger in the Czech Republic than in all of Eastern Europe compared to Germany. It's worse in East Germany than in West Germany, former East Germany, former West Germany, with the low fertility rates after German unification. So we are seeing an aging workforce, and a large share of the workforce is going to retire within the next 10 years. We see a labor market, an economy which is increasingly digitalized, and digital skills become super important. And we see structural change in general, also induced by changing demand. And one additional change in demand, government demand in this sense, is the investment in defense, which is changing government spending, and also the demand in manufacturing may restructure manufacturing tremendously. At IAB, we do these projections together with the Federal Institute for Vocational Training and a private consulting firm for the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. We predict basically where the labor market is going based on a model which sort of slices the economy into industries and occupations. And within each of these cells, we look at how does employment change under reasonable assumptions about what is going to happen for the next 15 years. Of course, nobody predicts within such a setting. This was done in 23, 24. So Trump's tariffs or the war in Iran is not part of this exercise. This is based on the data until 23, 24, what we expect is going to happen. The big thing, and which is very difficult to communicate to the public, the big thing is we have job destruction at a large scale and job creation at a large scale. So it's managing this structural change, moving, people moving, jobs moving to different segments in this slicing up of the economy is the challenge. So what you see is 3 million new jobs for a labor force of about 40 million, if you want to make it simple. 3 million new jobs will be created. 4 million jobs here will be lost until 2040. Okay, and then we see what are the reasons for the changes. There are many reasons, I will not name them all. The most important reason for the change is the blue bar, the large creation and destruction, and it's structural change. So just by demand, by technology, this will change the composition of the workforce, of employment in occupations, across occupations and industries. And then the second largest bar is the red bar here. Why are 1 million jobs lost? Not because there is no need for the workers. It's because there are no workers to fill those jobs. So skill shortages, worker shortages will also play another role. To sum up, if we had enough workers, actually we wouldn't lose any jobs. So 1 million jobs will be lost because of the lack of bodies, basically. That's very important. And there is a lot of change, of course. Jobs created, jobs lost. The public debate in Germany focuses about the job losses. It doesn't put enough emphasis, maybe that's natural, that's human. Loss is a bigger thing than opportunities which you don't see yet. But managing this change is a crucial policy challenge. What is behind structural change? opening the black box of structural change. There are a lot of issues, of course, to discuss. One thing is artificial intelligence, the new wave of technological changes of digitalization. And my colleagues at IAB look at this a lot. And one instrument we use is the estimate of one analytical tool we use is the estimate of substitution potential. What is that? We go through the descriptions of occupations in Germany for about 5,000 occupations. There is the so-called ONET, Occupation Information System. The German word is Berufenet. This is collected by the Federal Employment Agency, go back 60 years, a scientific foundation for career advice for young and older people. So there is this very detailed description of what is being done in jobs by occupation and how that changes from year to year. IAB has started in 2013 to summarize what is going on there in terms of substitutability. Often this is also called automation potential. How many of the tasks can actually be replaced by computers, machines? And that's the gray bar here. And we use here the ordering of the Federal Employment Agency in terms of the qualification level of labor demand. So the top one are so-called helper jobs, Helferberufe. So jobs which do not require a vocational training. In 2013, those were the jobs which had the highest automation potential. Very much according to the textbook in labor economics. Technology replaces routine jobs, jobs where you don't need a lot of education, a lot of skills. And expert jobs, the most complex one, where you require more than a bachelor degree, more like a master or a German-style diploma, whatever, only 18.8%. And then this has been redone and also implemented using new technology. What are the new technology? Increase the potential to automate. And the amazing thing on the one end is, with helper jobs, the low-skilled jobs, a limit has been reached. 2016, more automation substitution was possible than in 2013, but then, no, it's not increasing. The dramatic changes at the top, the medium high-skilled and very high-skilled jobs now are also increasingly substitutable. And that's bad news for university graduates, because the supply of the education system is going into these two groups. Especially the second one from the bottom, the bachelor graduates. We see an explosion of bachelor students in Germany. And relative to that, there may not be that many jobs in the future. And the second from the top are the skilled workers with a vocational degree, be it school-based or apprenticeship firm-based. There we also see an increasing substitutability, but the relative change is not as high as in the higher skilled jobs. This is mostly pre-AI. Some of AI was already in this in 2020, but ChatGPT was introduced then. A lot of things, recent evidence from the IAP establishment survey, in fact, shows that between 22 and 25, the share of firms using AI, large language models basically, increased from 5% to 25% within just 3 years. So this is going to change the workplace in a very quick and strong way. Again, it will be that new jobs will be created using that, and some old jobs will disappear, or the demand for them will be reduced. Let me go into this. We have also, based on the same model, a scenario analysis, a projection how AI will change the German economy. It will create additional growth, a lot of additional value added in the economy. The total number of jobs will remain almost unchanged. There will be a small number of increases in jobs, but there will also be parts of the economy where jobs will fall tremendously. The labor demand will fall. And for us as economics professors, it's kind of critical that the biggest reductions will be in the business service sectors. We will see probably fewer economics students finding jobs in what they are trained for in the future than what we see as of today or most recently. And the changing the labor demand, similar to what you saw for the automation potential, will affect the top level, the top skill levels, experts and specialists. So the two top groups will be most affected by AI. So this shift of digitalization towards affecting now high-skilled jobs in a greater extent now holds even more so for AI. And unskilled, semi-skilled workers, skilled workers, the lower two groups will be much less affected by AI. These are the job gains and job losses. Similar to what I showed you before, the total effect will be very small, almost zero. First a small increase, then basically neutral after 15 years. The important message is it will change the kind of jobs, the distribution of jobs. So, sorry, I'll talk about tariffs just for a second. We've also done a simulation on that. Let's first glance, just to continue on my talk yesterday. Yesterday I just talked about German exports in comparison to the US and the impact of China in the academic paper. This is the development of German exports since 2022, and you see the problem. The lower line, what's that in English? The color? Violet? Purple? Purple. Okay. Purple line is China. So exports to China are 25% lower in 2025 than in 2022. And that's the continuation of a trend which already started in 2017, 2018. Export to the US were stable, the black line, slightly increasing in 22, stable until Trump 2, and then strongly declining by almost 20%. Exports to Europe, to the Eurozone, fairly stable, also suffering from the weak economy a little bit, and increasing since 24. But, so you see, the two main markets, US and China, we are losing out at this point due to aggressive trade policies, but also fairly strong industrial policies, as in the case of China. We did a projection of one version of tariffs. Of course, you never know what Trump eventually does, and the model does not include all the versions which he eventually implemented, and it's not clear what will happen given the legal disputes in the US. Anyway, so to get sort of an order of magnitude what these tariffs will do, the first scenario includes 25% tariffs on Chinese, Mexican, Canadian, and European imports to the US without retaliation. And the second scenario also includes the retaliatory, basically retaliation, tit for tat, so we also impose 25%. What will do that? And not just us, but everybody. The EU, Canada, Mexico, China also uses those introduce the same level of tariffs. And then, of course, it's important what you actually do with the tariffs as a government. Here it's assumed to subsidize production in the country. Of course, in reality, that will not probably be the case, but that's the scenario we will look at. And then you see, in these scenario analysis, the difference between different situations. The gray line is German exports in the world, in the counterfactual world of no tariffs, just happily growing. And then in scenario 1 and scenario 2, you see then the simulated exports of Germany, and whether we retaliate or not doesn't seem to matter a lot. It helps Germany a little bit, the retaliation, then changes the loss, reduces the loss compared to just accepting the US tariffs and nothing else happening, but it doesn't make a big difference. So there is a sizable loss in German exports, 1% in every year. There are, okay, sorry. And this is going to last. I mean, there is basically an immediate adjustment, and then the losses become slightly bigger over time, but the effect is almost immediate based on this scenarios analysis. So where are we? German labor market faces significant challenges due to what I said before. There is an increase in defense spending, so other things, the money cannot be used twice. There is uncertainty due to US tariffs. I could now add the war in Iran. Of course, there's also uncertainty about the war in Ukraine, how this will develop. The employment of older people, women, and migration are the key areas to address the potential, the actual skill shortages, and to mitigate the negative economic effects here. Let's move to the second topic Daniel assigned me to. Evidence-based policy. This is sort of at the heart of what we do at IAB, what we want to provide advice upon. Sometimes this works very well. Sometimes policymakers, of course, have to move very quickly and have to do as well as possible with the existing evidence. I remember the meetings in March, April 2020, where everybody stared at everybody else in Nuremberg. In the board meetings of the Federal Employment Agency, we were all wondering what's going to happen. There was no evidence for a COVID crisis which we could build upon. So I was very impressed how politicians and also decision makers acted in that time. That's, however, fortunately unusual. For most economic challenges, labor market challenges, there is evidence and we can use that. And we are happy to provide such evidence and base our advice on that. I'm referring to a paper I've published with a junior researcher at IAB, Caroline Hiesinger. Unfortunately, it's in German, but it's sort of a best case scenario, how to do evidence-based policy. It's also in this English publication. Basically, we will look at a program called Subsidized Jobs for the Long-Term Unemployed, an evaluation of the German Participation Opportunity Act. So that's a policy which was introduced in 2018, 2019. Very huge subsidies for people who had been, one part, for people who had been out of the labor market for more than 6 years, no jobs, under very difficult situation where they were living. So employers got at the beginning a 100% wage subsidy, and then that was reduced over time. The second component of that was a more generous wage subsidy for long-term unemployed, so people who had been out of the labor force for 1 year, but that was not a 100% subsidy. So this was a lot of money Germany still ran a budget surplus at the time, so the government had a lot of money, and the IAB was asked to evaluate that. However, we will not get to a cost-benefit analysis here, but we'll go to the benefit part. So, the benefits of using linked data for evidence-based policy. That's one of our key advantages. We argue strongly that linking data is very important. There's a lot of administrative data available in our countries, and we need to channel those in a way to make them accessible to analyze them, to base good policies upon them. And at IAB we can, as I mentioned before, we can merge data within the realm of what the Federal Employment Agency does under the legal framework where it operates. So it's responsible for the unemployment insurance. It collects it's the sort of the residual claimant of the employment records, the Social Security records in Germany. It's a pillar of the official statistics, and it's responsible for the citizen income, so the welfare payments for the long-term unemployed and their dependents. Those in that part of the data space, we can merge basically everything. And if people agree, give consent in our surveys, we can also merge their survey responses to these data sources. And I mentioned here a few data sets which are based and which are used in the scientific community. Maybe for a labor economist, the merge between the IAB establishment survey, this longest running firm level survey, with the administrative data in the Social Security records through the firm and employee level is one of the first linked employer-employee data sets in the world, which was made available about 20 years ago. So this is basically the data space. You don't want to see everything here. What is the core is on the top, the Social Security records in Germany. In the middle, we have all the payment systems and job seeker systems of the Federal Employment Agency. Those are merged to the integrated employment biographies. Then we have surveys which we run, and when people give consent, the survey data are linked to these admin data. That's IAB's data world. How is this used in the evaluation of the Participation Opportunity Act, in German Teilhabechancengesetz, or also abbreviated in public discussions as sozialer Arbeitsmarkt, so a labor market for disadvantaged people. We know that long-term unemployment proves to be fairly detrimental on your future employment prospects. Once you've been unemployed for a long time, it's hard to convince an employer that you get a job. This policy, this Participation Opportunity Act, wants to enable employment and social participation. So there's a strong sociological angle here about. There were two types of programs, long-term unemployed. So in this setting, the shorter unemployment, people unemployed for a shorter period, 75% of wage costs were covered in the first year, 50% in the second year, and then you should fly on your own. And the really expensive one was the participation in the labor market, wage for really long-term unemployed, so people who have been unemployed out of the labor force for 6 years or longer. Wage subsidy over a period of up to 5 years covers the full wage costs in the first and second year, and then gradually reduced over the course of the 5 years. And then after 5 years you have to fly on your own. Arguably one of the most generous wage subsidy programs in the world. What did we do at IAB? I mean, we were commissioned by the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, that was before my time actually there, to run a survey among these people. They also wanted outcomes which are not in the admin data, social participation, and we used the admin data with regard to the quantitatively measurable employment outcome, etc. So for the program for the long-term unemployed, but not super long-term unemployed, EVL called here. Recall, the subsidy was lasting 24 months. So this shows, compared to a control group, which was identified using matching as a statistical tool. Matching means for a person receiving the subsidy, you look for a person in our data based on the survey evidence and the administrative data, a person who looks exactly the same. We call that a statistical twin. And then you look at the difference. What does the program do? And such a program, of course, has a lock-in effect. Some of the statistical twins find a job on their own. That's why the program has a negative effect, because this only counts unsubsidized employment. 0 is the twins and the program participants would find a job which is not subsidized, and the twins do to some extent. So after 1 year, maybe 6–7% of the statistical twins have an unsubsidized job, and so that counts against the program. But that's natural. I mean, the program lasts for 2 years. Why would you not keep the subsidy? After 2 years, we see a jump, and the jump is 30%, more than 30%. So this is a first. Of course, we can debate a lot, and researchers love to dispute these results because it's matching is not the most fashionable method as of today. But the size of the jump at 24 is remarkable. This tells you that more than 1/3 of the subsidized are retained by their employer, at least, which for the population here under investigation, this seems fairly successful. Policymakers in Germany, at least those who, the party in power in the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, so the Social Democrats, are happy with this outcome. 1/3 seem to be permanently employed, and this continues. There is the second angle. It's not just only employment, it's also life satisfaction, participation in daily life. Life satisfaction, the participants, those receiving the subsidies, report here the blue bars, and then the length of these lines sort of measures statistical uncertainty. There's variation. There are more happy people, there are less happy people. So it's not super precise in a statistical sense, but there is evidence with regard to life satisfaction that the participants are happier than the non-participants. Happiness with the standard of living, there is a sizable difference. Satisfaction with health, no statistically distinguishable difference. So there is also some positive effect here. I'm not really defending these results. Future publications will, the academic system will decide upon how reliable. However, these results affect policymakers, and they give sort of a framework how to do evidence-based policy advice. You need to collect data. You need to think early enough to collecting data. It's good practice. Best practice would be to run an experiment. That was not feasible here. But good practice is to run a survey at the same time. If policymakers are interested in outcomes which we don't have in admin data, then you need to survey them. You provide data on that. The survey needs to be linked to admin data, so all the data you have should be used to get an assessment of this. I wish we could do more field experiments. There is still a lot of hesitation. I don't know where you stand here in the Czech Republic on field experiments. I'm very much pushing for that. That's something we do very little. We have done small information treatments at IAB, but large labor market programs, we are not allowed to do field experiments. Except once, and that failed because it was implemented at the beginning of COVID. And then the external validity that was bad luck. Anyway, so let's go to the third one. That field experiment, in fact, involved career guidance in academic track high schools in Germany, which was implemented in the fall of 2019, so that 160 high schools implemented a program 1 year later. That was the closest we could get to do a field experiment, and that went into the COVID period, and therefore it didn't really work as an evaluation. School to work transitions, challenges in the German VET market. I'm happy to talk a little bit about some findings I did with 3 junior researchers. One of them is now working at CERGE-EI. She was a postdoc for some years, Anna Hosteska, here at IAB in Nuremberg. And Anna Häusler, Leonie Wicht are 2 PhD students at IAB. And we just happened to publish this paper last year in Labor Economics, the less respected European one, as Daniel said. But we were still very happy about the publication. So where do we stand with the VAT market in Germany, the apprenticeship system? It's under constant decline. If you start in 2009, we had almost 560,000 contracts concluded, meaning young individuals starting a firm level apprenticeship. Apprenticeships means there is, you work at a firm, you actually have a labor contract at a very low wage, and you go to vocational school. And after 3 years, after 2.5 years, after 3.5 years, you take an exam and get a degree. You can be a plumber. You can be an IT programmer. You can be a butcher. It's a role model for many countries, but it's on decline. Both the number of positions and the number of applicants is falling. And in that paper, we look at the development since 2009, and in particular in light of the strong decline during COVID. And the German system has not recovered from the loss from COVID. In fact, last year we were almost at the same low number as in the COVID year 2020. So what is the dual system? As I said already, on-the-job training at a training firm combined with general education at a vocational school. There are 324 occupations this applies to. These are not all occupations in Germany. You heard me saying there are 5,000 occupations at the 8-digit level. University degrees, school-based vocational training, specific training at government jobs, Beamtenausbildung, civil service jobs is not included. But it's the heart of the vocational training system in Germany. The entry rates used to be 50%. Now, because of the scarcity of skilled labor, more apprentices than ever are retained by the firm. So it's not the risk of not being retained by the firm that young people don't start an apprenticeship. Firms are actually eager. Once somebody completes the degree, they are happy to take the person and keep it. 79% is a record number. It's one of the reasons why Germany has a very low youth unemployment rate. It guarantees a smooth school-to-work transition. The VAT market operates like a standard labor market. Young people apply to positions, firm screen the applicants and offer contracts, It starts in August or September of every year, and after 2.5 to 3.5 years, you take the exam and you get the certificate. The Federal Employment Agency is very much involved in this application process. As I heard this morning, 5,800 career counselors go to all schools in Germany and give advice. School students pupils can come to the federal employment offices locally and get more information. Firms post their vacancies, the apprenticeships they want to fill through the employment agency, more so than in the general labor market. And many young individuals go through the Federal Employment Agency more so than in the general labor market to be matched. These are the data we use in our analysis. The blue line is the actual number of apprenticeships started. The orange line is the number of vacancies. So you see there are many more vacancies. So many firms would like to hire more apprentices, train more apprentices than they actually manage to do. And the green line is the number of applicants, young people seeking an apprenticeship. If you're an economist, you already see in that figure increasing mismatch. The gap between the share of vacancies which cannot be filled is growing over time. The share of applicants who do not end up starting an apprenticeship is growing over time. We call that growing mismatch in the labor market. You see here, in particular with regard to the vacancies, the number of unfilled vacancies growing over time. The green line is actually falling in the most recent years, but it's very high to start with. So there is if you started this in 2009, you would also see an increase in the green line. We now look, we separate the labor market into occupations and regions. The 150 regions in Germany, the employment districts where the employment agency operates, and the 324 occupations. And we look at the matching process. What is the matching process? It's sort of this stylized notion of economists. There are applicants and vacancies, they meet in the market, and some of them match, so a contract is concluded. A young individual starts to work at a certain firm. It starts the training. How well this works is called matching efficiency. It takes the notion of a production process into the functioning of a labor market. This matching efficiency, when we look at this, we're using econometric techniques, so statistical techniques to analyze this and to filter out separate effects. We see that the matching efficiency is falling over time. It was highest in 2012-13. So in 2012-13, when a random applicant met a random firm, then the rate that they actually that the applicant starts a job at this firm was 4 percentage points higher than it was in 1919. That 1920, 2021. So the functioning of bringing the two sides of the market together declined over time. There's a lot of variation across regions. Some regions, matching works very well. These are the light colors, the light green colors, and some regions the matching doesn't work very well. These are the red colors. There's a lot of regional dimension. What we then do next with an sort of involved statistical econometric analysis is then to dig deeper. What is behind this fall in number of apprenticeships started? The first thing we do is we run a counterfactual simulation based on our statistical analysis. how would the number of apprenticeship have changed if applicants remained at the level of 2013? And the green line then is the difference between what we see actually and what would have happened under the counterfactual. So if applicants had remained at 2013, we don't see much of a change. And then with COVID, we see that with the high number of applicants of 2013, the number would have been much higher today. So as of today, it's actual minus counterfactual. So with the 2013 applications, we would have not seen the decline we observe in COVID. Now, matching efficiency, similar story, but already starting earlier. Matching efficiency also contributes to the decline in matches, unsurprisingly, what I showed you before. And then these are differential changes. So 2013 is just the effect of applicants. Matching efficiency just as well reduced the matches, but more continuously already starting in 2014. And then the changes in vacancy also contributed in COVID times, but actually before COVID stabilized. Because firms posted more vacancies in the late 2010s, the apprenticeship market was actually slightly recovering. In fact, it actually flipped sides. Already in 2017, 18, suddenly it changed from there was a lack of positions to there was a lack of applicants before COVID. So all three play a role, but with a different timing. Then we dig a little bit deeper, for instance, also looking at the education credentials of the applicants, looking at the inflow of refugees, young refugees, how much they play a role, and we also look at school leavers. And the biggest one is the blue line. And the second biggest line is the purple line. So applicants from crisis states, so these are mainly refugees, stabilized the apprenticeship market. And the decline in the number of school leavers, they're simply less from the local population in Germany. There are less graduates from school caused the fall in the number of apprenticeships concluded. Let me not dig further into the detailed results. This just gives you a flavor how academic research can be used for policy advice. Let me conclude by saying the VET market in Germany at the same time is still a role model. Still a lot of youth go through it, but it's under substantial pressure. I personally call it's in crisis. There is a long-term decline in applicants, a growing mismatch, and currently we are again in a situation where also firms withdraw in offering positions. At the same time, this will cause a scarcity of skilled labor when baby boomers retire. Matching efficiency and the number of applicants have dropped during COVID. The policy discussion in 2020 focused, as usual in a recession, firms will post less vacancies, less apprenticeships. Forgetting also the negative effect on applicants. In a period of uncertainty, young people do not make a decision. They rather postpone making this decision, and we see that clearly in the data. In the current economic crisis, the number of vacancies is declining and has declining over the course of this year as well. So this poses an additional challenge for the skill supply, the supply of skilled workers in Germany in the near future. Let me stop here and thank you for your attention and for your interest in what I had to say.
Hopefully short Czech reflection. It will be short for 2 or 3 reasons. One, we are short of time. The second is that we Czechs do not have so much analysis as Germans have, partly due to lack of data, especially linked data, and because we don't have IAB and the analytical capacity as they have in Germany. As most of you know about the Czech labor market, educational system, skills, and so on, so you notice many similarities with Germany, many similar problems we share with Germany, but also some differences. So let me reflect in a way of valid points to promote the question and answers session afterwards. So Czechs have still very low unemployment rate. It's growing, but it's still as low as in Germany, maybe still a little bit lower. At the same time, interestingly, we have very low share of part-timers, especially women, compared to Germany, where it's not the case. We have solid economic growth, but there is a danger that the current crisis will turn it down. We had a huge decline in real wages during the inflation period because we had very high inflation. The wages started growing, the nominal wages and real wages started growing recently, but the level of wages and salaries remains rather low compared relative to the level of economic development. We have extremely low job mobility. Job-to-job changes are not frequent. Changes through the unemployment are not frequent. There is still something behind this. Some people hope that the change in the unemployment legislation, which started in January, will change it. I'm not so sure. We have slow adoption of IT and especially AI in business sector and especially and more so in the governmental sector. Our educational system still doesn't recognize that there is AI on the rise. We are still solving the curricular things, not thinking about the impact of AI. We have very fragmented professionals, education of professions at the vocational schools as Germans have. We have a little bit lower number of professions we teach for. We consider it a problem, but we still don't know how to change it. Vocational schools, vocational education, we have very weak links between schools and firms, between companies. There are many reasons for that. And also, we have a low, how to call it? The quality of technologies provided at these vocational schools is relatively out of date. So most pupils who study there or get vocational training learn on outdated machines which are not regularly used in practice. We have very low participation in lifelong learning, very low, very low. And what's even more important is that the people, even young people, when they leave school, they hate school and need further education. I will not clarify here what's the reason and why, but it's a problem, really. We have, as Germany, we have a rather low share of tertiary educated people among youngsters, especially men. Young men are low educated compared to Czech women. We have a low and still declining intensity of funding of education and research, despite these setbacks. We are experiencing this. The old and the new government didn't change anything in this declining trend. Innovation leaders, countries are labeled as innovation leaders, strong innovators. This is Germany, at least according to the statistics of the World Bank and OECD. I'm not sure about these days, but it was valid at least for 2 years ago. Czech Republic is only moderate innovator. Fortunately, it's not emerging innovator. And the Czech Republic and Czech economy, as we know, depends heavily on the developments in the German economy. What happens in Germany sooner or later, it usually takes 1 or 2 years, comes to the Czech Republic. So we should follow very closely what's going on in Germany. And my last note concerns evidence-based policies, because it's very important for us, even more important. There are many people from this segment. It's a big challenge. The regulatory impact assessment in Czech Republic is of low quality. It improved very slowly. It still is slow. There is shortage of analysts at the ministries. I remember my advice to the Prime Minister in 2022 when he started that he should foster this. So thanks to this, several positions have been established at the Czech ministries. I told him there will be how to say, achievements during those few years. You should expect achievements in 10 years when these teams developed into stable, broader, skilled teams. Unfortunately, the new government brought big instability to these teams. Some of them are already dissolved. Some of them are in big uncertainty what will be. So the regulatory agenda, laws, regulation is becoming prepared outside of ministries, outside of these analytical teams. And these are important laws. These are not some simple modifications. So the evidence-based policy making during the last 3 months has deteriorated a lot. So we hope it's just beginning, it's not the end, that it will get better when the government finds that things do not work well in this way. And last note is on administrative data. It concerns data collection. We have as much data as in Germany. We have data on everything almost, but it's not collected for the purpose of analysis. It's collected historically or for the purpose of some administration, but not for analytical purposes. So sometimes you cannot use the data because these are not in a shape which could be used. And if the shape is good and the content is good, these data are not made available to the public, not to the public, but to the professionals, analysts, and the academic sphere. So there are many legal and technical problems how to use data. There were some improvements during last years in the area of labor, social welfare, and health. Improvements in data collection and availability. We are still lagging behind a lot in the area of education, Ministry of Education and schools and universities. We cannot connect data together, and of course we cannot data with the labor market outcomes, health outcomes, and so on. So this was my list of pros and cons, or where Czechs are better or not so good compared to Germany. Okay, so let me conclude with this unclear outlook so that we can continue the debate several years later.
I'll come back.
And I would like to thank all those important involved. So it means the invisible team which made this happen. I would like to thank to our partner, Mr. Schmidt, and the German embassy for very good and smooth collaboration on this. Let me also thank you considering coming, and especially thank to Professor Fitzenberger for his talk and this motivating atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.